Welcome to the fastest stop in town. Today on Masechtas Sotah Daf Yotes, we're going to begin on Yotes Amud Aleph by the new parak, new Mishnah. The Mishnah tells us, "Hayanoitel es minchasa mitoich kfifa mitzvah." As we mentioned, the flour offering of the Sotah is put into this kfifa mitzvah, into this basket, and from that point, v'nosna l'toich kli sharis, the flour is then transferred into a kli sharis. And this, as Rashi says, reminds us of Habal. It's the husband that's involved in this process. And once it's put into the kli sharis, v'nosna al yadah, it's now put into her hands in order for it to be waved. The Kohen meniach yado metachtaha, the Kohen puts his hands underneath hers, because, as Rashi says, tenufa srichi yad balam b'yad kohen. It's necessary, in order to be able to perform tenufa, it's not just the one who's bringing the offering, but also the Kohen has to do it simultaneously. And that's what happens. A manifa, they wave it. Umanifa, heinif v'higish. So after it's done, it is brought close to the mizbeach. As we mentioned, the Maravas Draimus, that it has to be in the southwestern corner of the mizbeach, based on the psukim with Hashem. And then afterwards, kamatz, the Kohen does the kamitz, the scooping up of the flour from this kli sharis, the hikdir, and he's makdir this, and then v'hashar nechel kohanim. Whatever is left over in the kli sharis, the kohanim are allowed to eat, which again is what we've actually said before. Now, the Mishnah continues and says, "Hayamashke." The process is, first she drinks the mesoita, yachach makriv, and only afterwards do we say that are we makriv the carbon. So on this, Rashi points out that this seems difficult based on the language of the Mishnah. The Gemara Parich hatani v'hikdir. It already says in the Mishnah that first we're v'hikdir. It says that you're supposed to first be makriv it, which is mashma, before the woman drinks. So how can we say that you're mashkevachach makriv? So that's something in which is going to be discussed. Fine. So that's again a question the Gemara is going to ask. Which again seems to be pashtus of the language of the Mishnah. And it says afterwards she will drink the water. However, even though that is the proper order according to him, if it was done the other way around, if she would actually have drunk and only afterwards it brought the carbon, the mincha would have been brought, then it would still be kosher. So it's a machlokas, the order, does she drink first or we makriv the carbon mincha? But according to this opinion, even if it was done in a different order, that if she would have drank first, nonetheless it's still kosher. Says the Gemara, Armali Rabbi Lazal Rabbi Yeshaya did Dari. So he said the following. Did Dari, Rashi says a Moirahu. This is referring to in his generation who was an Amoira, not a Tana. He says lo taste of akarach, you should not sit literally on your ankles. Ad mefarsha hamilsa, until you explain the following. Menayin mincha saita sheteuna tenufa. How do we know that tenufa is required? So he says, what do you mean? Manalan vehenif ksibba. The pasuk says mefarish vehenif. So obviously it's supposed to be done with waving. So the Gemara says no, but Baal and Manon. I can understand maybe the Kohen has to do tenufa, but how do we know that the Baal also has to? So Asi Yad Yad Mishlam. We're in out Gzer Shava from the carbon Shlom. Mak Siv Hacha Locha Koich Miyad Isha. It says here regarding the Sotah that the Kohen takes it from the hand of the woman. Siv Hasam over there in Sefer Vayikra Yadav Teviena. So Ma'kan Kohen Aflahon Kohen Malahon Balam Afkan Balam Haketsan Meniach Yado Takashadeh Habalam Meinif. This is Gemara in many places. Couldn't miss the Sukkah. That you're supposed to do it in this way, that both of them are doing it simultaneously and they wave. Says Rashi, Dolotim Rabbi Yeshaya Hazakin Dalab Arach Arul Memrele Hachi Shegadav Zakin Mimenu Haya. So it must be that when we're talking about Rabbi Yeshaya, it couldn't be referring to Rabbi Yeshaya, the elder, because no one would say, "Hey, don't sit down on your ankles. Don't get comfortable until you explain this to me." You would never speak that way to a gadol, to a zakin. So it must be it's referring to the Amira, who is the younger generation, who is in the generation of Rabbi Eliezer ben Padas. So that's how we understand this. Okay. So now the Gemara continues and says, so again, it says first she drinks and then she's makriv of the mincha. The problem with that is we just mentioned ha'akrava. We already mentioned that it's already been makriv before she drinks, because the Mishnah explicitly says kamatz v'hikter. It already says v'hikter, which is mashma, you're supposed to bring the carbon first. So hachikamer. This is what it says. This is what we mean. Seder menacha is ketzad. What is the order of the mincha? Hanif. So you wave v'higish and you bring kos mizbeach kaimetz. You scoop v'hikter. The shar nechel kohanim. Now this doesn't mean that this is the order. Only that these are the parts of the ceremony. And then and therefore v'hashka gufa plig Reb Shimon v'Rabbanan. Rabbanan savri mashka makriv es minchasa. Reb Shimon savar makriv es minchasa v'kach mashka. Shneim Rabbi achar yashke. So it doesn't necessarily mean that this Mishnah is specifically telling us this is the order, and therefore you have to be makriv it and then she drinks. Maybe it's the other way around, because it's actually machlokas. And all the Mishnah is doing is it's just trying to give us and lay out what are the different steps in general of bringing a carbon mincha, of bringing this offering, this mincha sotah. But it doesn't mean that it's saying that it has to be done before the drinking. It could be the other way around, as it's machlokas. And then the Mishnah says, as we continue to your Testament base, b'diavad, even if you hold this way, but if you do it the other way around, it's still kosher. Everything is still okay. All right. So Tanoban, the Gemara says in New Testament base, v'hishka. Now the pasuk says v'hishka, or in its entirety, v'hishka seisha esmei hamorim, that the woman drinks these bitter waters, uvovo hamayim marim, and it will test her out. So matam lo v'lo nemar v'hashka. We already mentioned before that she drinks. So I have to say again v'hishka. Shim nimchka megillah. That, let's say the Megillah already got erased. Hashem's name was erased. The Omeris, and at that point, after the Megillah's been erased, she says, "Any shaisa," that I do not want to drink. Doesn't matter. Ma'aririn oisa umashkin oisa balkarcha. We're going to open up her mouth, and we're going to make her drink against her will. So in this case, once the name has been erased, so this is the idea, that even though the Kohanim shouldn't have erased the name of Hashem until, let's say, after the Haktaira, still we force her to drink. Div Rabbi Kiva, Shimon Omer v'Achar Yashke Matamudom V'Lo Kvar Nem Rabbi Hishka. Again, why does it say it? El Achar Kol Hamasim Kulin. Only after all the other things are done. Hamur Mumala Magid Gimel Devarim Ma'akvin Ba. It shows you that there are three things regarding this that is Ma'akev. Says, well, let's finish. Ad shelo karav hakaimitz. If before the kaimitz was done, the ad shelo nimchaka megillah, before the megillah was erased, the ad shelo tekabel leha shvua, and before she accepted upon the shvua. Says Rashi, halol ma'akvin. These are ma'akev, the haktorah, the bringing of the mincha, v'hashava, the oath, umachika, and having erased. The kama parich pshita koidem machika matishte. Obviously, before you erase it, what should you drink? So, in all these cases, she cannot drink until these three things are done. According to this opinion, you have to be makdir as well, in addition to making a shvua and also erasing her name. So again, Rashi says that that's a different pashut. How can you drink it without having Hashem's name in it? That's part of the recipe for this water. So therefore, according to this opinion, you're supposed to first bring the kaimitz You're supposed to bring it first, and then she drinks. So actual karva kaimitz. Now let's say she drinks before the kamitza, before the aktaira. So Rav Shimon the Tamed, according to Rav Shimon, you're supposed to first be makar of the carbon and then afterwards drink, which is the reason why Rav Shimon says over here that one of the three things as ma'akiv is if she drinks ad shaloi karva kaimitz before it was brought, because you're supposed to first bring the mincha and then only afterwards drink. If she would drink first, that's wrong. That would be ma'akiv. Ad shaloi nimcha kamagila. So he said, make sure she doesn't drink before the name is erased. What do you mean? Elamai mashkila. Obviously, what is she drinking? It's nothing. So Ravashi l'nitzrucha l'shirishimo nicker. It means that Hashem's name was written in there and it was put in, but like the second after it was put in, it takes time for the letters to dissolve. And therefore, if Hashem's name is still there, so therefore in that situation, that's what it's referring to. Certainly you're right. It couldn't be talking about you just drinking it without putting the mechika, but it means even after you put it in, but you haven't given enough time for the letters to actually have dissolved, so then that's also ma'akiv. Actually, to kabule hashvua, mishtahu deloi shasya. So she's not supposed to drink before the shvua. Ha michtav kasvila, but it's written for her. Ha'omer michtav kasvila. Says Rashi, it says, Ha michtav kasvila koin the Megillah, koidim kabal shvua. It says that the Megillah is written before the kabbalah of the shvua. So va'amar Rabba Megillah Sotah shekasvu koidim shekabel shvua lo aslu klum. But a Megillah which was written before she was makabel the shvua, that doesn't work either. So my answer is kedin nitzvah. Says Rashi, shlo tzarich. You're right. That one was not necessary to have been mentioned, because the reality is that when it comes to the Megillah of the Sotah, it has to be written. It has to be. It can only be written after she was makabel the shvua. Megillah Sotah shekasa kodim shekabel shvua lost a little klum. So therefore, you're right. When it comes to this last point of ashul dekabel hashvua, if she drank before the shvua, then certainly it wouldn't work, because you're not even supposed to write it before the she's makabel the shvua. So that is kedei nitzvah. Okay, all right. Let's hold off 1 second. Let's see question 13. So mandi yomer shemash k'v'yakach makriv, that you drink first. L'may asa oid beis pa'amim t'chsev hashka chutz min ha'rishonet itzruch hagufa. So one is the be'in the mechika she'in rishimoneh ha'nikr. It has to be that the letters have to be completely erased. They cannot be recognizable. It has to be completely dissolved. And also, shim nimcha Megillah, if the Megillah is erased, yomeris eini shaisa. At that point, if she says, "I don't want to drink," mashka isabal karcha, then in that case, we are going to force her to drink against her will. TA 29. I got this question completely wrong. Shimon oimer gibel devarim akven, etc. The adshul to kabbalah shvua. The Gemara masik dichtei nitzvah. Madua. Why is this considered to be a case? Let me mark this down. TA 29. Why is this a case that's really not necessary to even mention? This notion of adshul to kabbalah hashvua mishta, that if she drank before she was makabel the shvua, that it doesn't work. Ha delo shasya, who delo shasya, ha michtav kasula. But you're going to tell me it was allowed to be written? We know it's not even allowed to be written. So that's the whole point. So it can't even be written until she's after makabel. So let's see what it says. The kadim kabel shvua, I feel in kaisven, v'lo shayach lahashaycha. You can't even write it until she's makabel the shvua. Okay. Right. So, what exactly, and we kind of just touched upon this with question 13, what is this machlokus? What comes first? Being makriv, the mincha, or the drinking of the mei sotah? Tulasa kroi ksivi. There's 3 psukim. V'hishka kama. The first time it says v'hishka seisha es me'amodim. V'achar yashke. It says v'achar yashke, which is the second quote. V'achar yashke seisha samoyim. V'hishka batra. And there's another hishka. V'hishka samayim. V'hoisa im nitma v'timo elmal ba'ishach. So that's also brought down. That's pasuk chav zayin. So there's three psukim. Rabbanan sari v'hishka kama. The first v'hishka, that she drinks the bitter waters, is a gufo. It's just telling you pashut pshat. Shemashke v'achach makriv es minchasa. That this is the order. You drink first, and then afterwards you makriv the mincha. V'achar yashke. Why does the pasuk say v'achar yashke? Afterwards, ach yashke isha samoyim. Miboyle l'shir shimo nicker. It tells you that you have to make sure that the letters are erased. V'hishka batrash im nimcha megillah v'yamer seinu shaisa. As we said, that if she refuses at that point, ma'arin oisel mashka oisel balkarch, will still force her. The Shimon said no. Yachar yashke el gufo. The pasuk Yachar yashke is the pashut shot. Shemakar ves minchasa v'achach mashke. Actually, you're supposed to bring the carbon first. The hishka kama sheim hishka v'achach chicha ves minchasa kshera. If it was done the other way around, but it works. The hishka baska sheim nimcha megillah v'yamer einu shaisa ma'arin oisel mashke. So that they agree that if once the Megillah is written and only now that she refused, then we force her to drink. Rabbanan b'diavad loy pasach kra. According to Rabbanan, b'diavad, the pasuk is not going to open. How can you learn the pasuk starting off about b'diavad? You should say, this is what you should do, and then if you can't do it, then this is b'diavad. For it to begin is hard to imagine. Now, we're saying, really according to both shitas, that at a certain point, once the Megillah is erased, and she says, no, I'm not doing it, we force her. Is that true? But Rabbi Yehuda Omer, he says, kalavus shel barzel, these prongs of metal, matil notoich pia, will stick into her mouth. Shim nimcha Megillah, in the case where the Megillah was already erased, the Amr Eni Shaisa, and only now she refuses to drink, we're going to force her, we're going to open up her mouth and make her drink. Bal Karcha, against her will. So Rabbi Kiva, who we said that agrees to this, we're going to see maybe not. Rabbi Kiva says, Klum anu srichen el ubaytka. Isn't the whole purpose to examine her? Vo baduka vo mendes. She's now baduka vo mendes. If she doesn't want to drink, therefore it's clear what the result is. It's pashut. She's admitting she's tamei, so we don't need to do this. So we see that we don't force her. So it's actually a kasha. How could we hold her? Kiva holds we force her. We see over here that there's no point, because the whole purpose of the drinking is to test to see if she's innocent or guilty. If she admits to her guilt, so what's the point of her having to drink? The fact she didn't say she's guilty necessarily. But she doesn't want to do it, right? So if at that point, we're not gonna force her, right? She doesn't say she's tummy. She says any shaisa, I don't want to drink. So in that situation, why doesn't she want to drink? So it must be psychological, because she knows that she's gonna be punished. El anshloi karba koimetz. So this is how Rabbi Kiva learns that before the kimitza is done, yichayil achsabo. Then she can retract. Once the kimitza was brought, then you can't retract. But again, the kasha is according to Rabbi Kiva. We see clearly he holds that we don't force her to drink. So it's a question on Rabbi Kiva. But according to you, it says once the kimitza was done, you can't retract. Why don't you say the same thing? It's obvious that she's admitting to her guilt. So lo kasha. So Gemara says there are sometimes we'll force her and sometimes we won't. Ha dikimit dika hadraba machmas resisa. One is the reason why she's acting this way is she's saying I don't want to drink, and you see her trembling. And Vaha Tikahadruba, the reason why she's retracting is Machmas Briusa, is because of health. She's calm about this. Kol Machmas Briusa, if you see that she's calm and cool and collected, she goes, no, I'm not drinking this. But she's not afraid of anything. Klal Kloshas. So in that situation, we're not going to have her drink if she's staying calm. If she calmly refuses, it is clear she really never intended to drink, as this shows her guilt. However, Machmas Resisa, if it's because she was afraid, so in that case, maybe she may really be innocent, but is afraid to drink. So there we will force her. So if we see that she is afraid, or she has, that this is meaningful to her, because she recognizes its value, so then all of a sudden we're going to force her to drink, because not necessarily does it show her innocence, because after all, it's possible that she's just doesn't want to really have this done. So Anshula Karba Kaimitz, before the carbon was brought, Dikatu Ich Imchuk Megillah, the Megillah was not erased. Inami Imchuk Megillah Shalokadin. Let's say the Megillah was first erased, even that's not the proper order. Avid Kohanim Demachne, and it happens that it could have been erased. Matzi Hadraba. So we allow her to retract, namely, we don't force her to drink. However, Shikarva Kaimitz, once a karmis was brought, the Bedin Avid Kohanim, they did it properly, the Machne Lul Matzi Hadraba. In that situation, she's not allowed to retract, and therefore we are going to force her to drink. So basically, hold off. Question 14. Ketzad Amar Bikiva. Shim Amar Enu Shaisa Mashke Ma'isa Bal Karcha. We make her drink by force, but elsewhere we find that he says Enu Shaisa Habaydik, but his Beduka Valmedes. There's no need to have to test her. So Hadyar Beduka Valmedes. When do we say that it's proof? Is when she retracts Machmas Beriusa. We see that she's calm and cool, which means she really had no intention of ever doing this. So in that situation, we say, it's clear, obviously, she was guilty. However, if we see it's Machmas Resisa, that she's afraid, so then in that situation, we are going to have her drink. As we continue to Chaf Amud Aleph, we'll get to the Mishnah. Kasha Rabbi Kiva. So we have a stira. Why? Hasam Omer Mechika Ma'akva, V'hacha Omer Kaimitz Ma'akev. In one place it says it's once the Megillah is erased, and over here it says it's by the time of the Kmitza. So Trei Tanai believe Rabbi Kiva. It's a machlok. It's a two Tanaim arguing about the Shita Rabbi Kiva. So he boilhu. Amrav, she says, Eini Shaisa Machmas Beriusa. She says, I'm not drinking because I am calm. The Chazvi Amr Shaisani, and then we repeat, and she says, Shaisani, I will drink, Mahu. Kivandi Amr Eini Shaisa. So when she says, I'm not going to drink, Tameani Ka'amr, she's basically admitting to her guilt. Kivan de Achsik Nasha Vatoma, that once she establishes herself as guilty, Lomatze Hadruba, she can't retract. Though Dilma Kivan de Amr Shaisa Ani, now that she's saying I will drink, Gali Daita, maybe it reveals the only demach must be a Susahud de Amra. She was only saying it due to concern of fear. Teku. Amr Vodu Shmuel, Sash Yitain Mar Lataychamayim. It says that you need to put the bitterness, that which is a davar mar, into the water. My time Amar Mei Hamarim Shemarim Kvar, that it was bitter from before. Adkan.